Some of Australia's leading climate scientists have welcomed proposals for wide-ranging reform of the United Nations Climate Science Panel. An international review has found that the credibility of the International Panel on Climate Change, known as the IPCC, has been damaged by some mistakes, exaggeration and inadequate transparency. But the review also praised the IPCC for its overall success in assessing climate change. Margot O'Neill reports.
The mistaken prediction by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that the Himalayan glaciers would disappear by 2035 due to global warming escalated attacks on the IPCC and on the accuracy of climate science. Now an international review has also criticised the IPCC for a lack of transparency and for making some statements for which there is little evidence.
I think the errors made did dent the credibility of the process. There's no question about it. And trust is something you have to earn every year. You never build up trust. You just have trust. You have to re-earn it all the time.
But the review supports the IPCC as an overall success, although it could prompt more calls for the resignation of Chairman Dr. Rajendra Pachauri because of a recommendation that members of the panel only serve one term. But Dr. Pachauri, who's in his second term, says he's not going anywhere.
I was instrumental in requesting this review. I personally feel that now that the review has been carried out and we have a set of recommendations, I have a responsibility to take it forward.
In Australia, for a range of political meetings, British economist and influential climate change lobbyist Lord Nicholas Stern said while IPCC processes could be improved, the core science has not been called into question.
You've had, of many thousands of papers, you've had a few that have turned out to be mistaken. I'm very glad we've discovered them. We should go on discovering them. But if you ask yourself how in this 200-year story of scientific history, how that makes any difference at all to the strength of the case, the answer is it doesn't make any serious difference.
The review by the international science body called the Inter-Academy Council, or IAC, recommends fundamental reforms to the IPCC, more rigorous guidelines for predicting the impacts of climate change and for stopping scientists from straying into advocacy, greater transparency and steps to ensure that genuine scientific debates are acknowledged. Two-time lead author and now review editor for the next IPCC report, Professor Andy Pittman, says the reforms will further improve an already rigorous process.
There were errors in the second report, the impacts report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the review process that's been undertaken, I hope, will tighten up some procedures and help us avoid making those mistakes in the future.
But while welcoming the reforms, climate sceptic Professor Bob Carter believes the IPCC should be abolished.
There's no earthly need for Australia to be going to the United Nations to ask for policy advice on environmental matters. We have our own scientists and we should consult with them, and CSIRO is clearly one of the cases in point, and CSIRO should certainly be consulted. However, they've been associated closely with the IPCC. They have 40 of their staff advise the IPCC. So what's really important is that the policy advice to the government is contested. It needs due diligence done on it and an independent audit, in a sense. You must consider many lines of scientific advice. You can't just take a monopoly advice from one body, be that body the IPCC or CSIRO or the Bureau of Meteorology.
The next IPCC report on the state of climate change is due in 3 years. Margot O'Neill, Lateline.